Hello, everybody, and welcome. It's November 3rd, 2017. This is the second semester of 2017. It's Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. And today I'm going to do an overview of this whole concept of flying rainbow lasagna and how it relates to us as individuals and how it relates to events on Earth that we are presently experiencing. And I felt compelled to do this. It's a bit of a divergence from the recorded lectures and the way that I usually do things in order, because a lot of new people have been finding my work on YouTube, and I understand that it can be difficult to even know where to dive in and how to begin. Like I'm trying to make this information accessible, not to alienate people in complexity. And as I said in the online introduction that I do before this, if you look at a painting like this, like what I have behind me here, we can agree and understand that's pretty complex. There's a lot of lines, there's a lot of overlapping shapes, there's a lot of colors, there's a lot of activity going on there. They didn't make it in order to have it be like, I can't understand this, it's too complex. The idea is, if you came to my studio, you would see all of these simplified paintings, and it all leads up to this painting. So it's just like being a musician. You start off with very simplified melodies and simplified sound structures and maybe Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and then add together those notes into more and more musical phrases. And over the years, you're able to collect and embody more musical phrases until it all adds up to a complex song like whatever, Moonlight Sonata or whatever it is. Let me just drink more water. Yes, so what I'm going to do, and I usually have this class structured as first hour is level 1 and second hour is level 2. What I'm going to do today is just do an hour-long presentation, take a break, and another hour-long presentation, and I'm just going to include everything, all the things that I usually do. So hey, I also usually, like when I started doing these formal recordings in 2013, I keep the information about galactic history not secret, but usually at the end of the semester, so that everyone has the opportunity to cultivate unconditional love and develop the perspective and the foundation, the emotional foundation, to be able to see and understand what is going on and not fly off the handle, not Dwayne Hubler. And it's not that time to go like that anymore. That was from 4 years ago or more. We don't have that type of time. And also, most people have already been exposed to these concepts through other videos or other teachers. The idea that humanity, the genetic code, has been invaded by thought invaders or consciousness invaders, and that our planet has been invaded. The good news or the bad news is that this planet was already invaded. If you're afraid of some science fiction movie where, evil aliens come out of the sky in a clank metal spaceship and they land on the White House lawn and they take over, like that is a vestigial fear of what has already happened more than 10,000 years ago, because we are all meant to be light eaters. We are all meant to have beautiful bodies that do not require the intermediary of chlorophyll or chloroplasts in order to catch a photon and turn it into a sugar or a starch and be able to run our body on just pure light. That was what we did, and what I refer to quite often as the antediluvian or pre-flood sophisticated worldwide culture that is now known as Atlantis. But Atlantis was not just one continent, as it is portrayed in human mythology here. It was a society or a culture that was all over the whole globe, just like we now have culture all over our whole entire planet. And please, no flat earth, no flat earth. I use the word globe. That's right, we live on a sphere and you got to deal with it. And no, I'm not a flat earther at all. I just I'm making all these distinctions in this video so that if anybody just access the main video, and I'll also, let me make my other distinctions too. I'm not a transhumanist. I don't promote the ideas of transhumanism at all. And I should introduce myself. You guys, all students of this class, know who I am. For anyone who's new, I'm Aurora, and I call myself a galactic walk-in, or a galactic abstraction that is in the physical form. And the way that I got into the physical form is through a genetic portal that is the flying rainbow lasagna oscillation. This flying rainbow lasagna shape is a dynamic shape. So right now I'm holding up a static sculpture. However, if you take the time to access some of my videos on YouTube, there's one called The Conception of the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. That's an animation, and I have another one that I'm working on too with a professional animator that shows how this is the end result of an oscillation. This is a dynamic shape. And so this shape is created through this oscillation on a genetic level. So basic backstory is human genes were degraded and constrained between 10 and 20,000 years ago. And the dance that they ordinarily do, I'll put down my sculpture so that I can gesture with this properly. So let's do chromosomes to chromatin. I should draw instead of gesture, but first I'll gesture. That the dance that DNA does inside of the nucleus was diminished because your genes are not flat static objects, just like this is not a flat static object. In science class, maybe genes are presented as an X-shaped chromosome or a Y-shaped chromosome. That's just like saying when all of your clothing is packed up in your carry-on luggage, you have all of your clothing rolled up into tiny little packages and stuffed into your suitcase. But that's not how your clothing usually is. Usually it is hanging on a hanger so that you can actually get it out of your closet. So usually, now I'll grab the whiteboard, usually for the greatest part of a cell's lifetime, grab this. This is the outer cell membrane. This is the nuclear membrane. This is what science says, oh, look, here's an X-shaped chromosome inside of your nucleus. But that's not what is actually going on. That's only during the time that your cells are preparing for cell division, mitosis, which is where the cell splits itself in half. So it has to pack up all of its clothing into its carry-on luggage so that it can effectively get on board the plane, quote unquote. But for most of the time, the DNA material is unfurled, like a sweater that has been unfurled with all of the little loops of crochet pulled out. And what this stuff in here in the nucleus is called is chromatin. And that's like the vibrating guitar strings of your body. So here's some basic takeaways that I say all the time. Your DNA is not a flat static object. It's always dancing and moving. And basically that's part of it's like your DNA is like a scroll, like, an old papyrus scroll or something like that. And in order to read what is inside of the papyrus scroll, it has to be unrolled. But in order to unroll it, other parts of it have to be rolled up. So this is the process of methylation. So I'll get into all of my little videos about that too. So methylation has to do with epigenetics. And I'll write it out for anyone who is new. And this is recap for everyone who's been in this class quite a lot. I didn't invent the idea of epigenetics. There are some wonderful evolutionary biologists like Bruce Lipton that are talking all about this. Here we go. Okay, this is an artistic representation. I did not draw this representation, and we have to understand that this is it's an artistic representation because you will never have like your whole entire chromosome curled up into an X like this, and then just a few little strands unfurled over here. Like that's what I'm trying to say. We're looking at this interpretation of what's going on. But that basically, if you took the sweater and you pulled out all the loops so that it wasn't put together like a sweater anymore, you could see how there's one thread. This is this one thread that is made of the two, DNA. Let's call it like a zipper, the teeth of a zipper that zip together. And what it does is it winds around these protein structures called histones. And then it goes to the next one and it winds around them. And it's like a thread winding around a spool. And when it begins this winding process, what it does is it creates these tori. And now I'm drawing kind of a donut shape. That's a very crude donut shape, but like there's the donut hole. And then this is all the cake that goes around the side. And what you end up with is a whole bunch of stacked up donut shapes. That is part of the genetic structure. And now I'll go back to my face. The donut shape has everything to do with this. And now I will get into where this comes from. All right. So this is the torus or the double torus. And you could also call it the shape of chakras or energy centers. And you will also see that it is a motif, like a visual melody that gets played over and over in my paintings. Look, it's all over all of these, this is the 3-dimensional version. This is the 2-dimensional version. Get the whiteboard and I'll tell you exactly how this yellow sculpture, this shape is created. So this has everything to do with adding dimensions together. And I'm going to take you through the building blocks of dimensions. This is a dot over here. And this dot is the 0th dimension. Repeating here for anyone who's been in this class a long time. 0, not because it is worthless. In this capitalistic society, I actually had to learn that if you say something is 0, then people will think that it is worth nothing, because around here, the more you pay, like if I told you it was the 1,000,000th dimension, you'd be like, oh, that's a really good dimension because it's the 1,000,000th. No, this is infinity. I'm making the infinity symbol here. This is the most valuable and the most special dimension that it is possible to have. It's the presence of everything, all matter, all energy, all possibilities, all probabilities. It's the tiniest little dot, like I've exaggerated the size of this dot. It's the tiniest little place that overlaps every single thing that can possibly be in existence. And in terms of building the dimensions, the most important thought that ever happened was when this little point of consciousness, that is everything, had to at a certain point think, what would happen if there was a little piece of me that wasn't here with everythingness that was somewhere else? And somewhere could be any place. It could be over here, it could be over here, it could be over here. And that thought, that critical little moment, that's the thought that we all have to have in order to keep gaining new dimensions and gaining new additional degrees of freedom. So let's say this 0th dimension thought, what would it be like if there was, let's make a little pink, if there was a little pink part of me that was over here. And as soon as that happened, that's the invention of the 1st dimension. If we take a bunch of dots and connect those 2 dots together, what we have is a line, and the line is the 1st dimension. And it's called the 1st dimension because it only requires one piece of information to describe the position of a point on a line. If I put that X there, it only takes one piece of information to describe where the X is on the line. And if we then go, what is 90? So this was a 90-degree leap. Like here, I'm making a little square, that little 90-degree, in geometry, that little symbol. We just jumped 90 degrees in this direction. Okay, everyone took geometry. What is 90 degrees in the next direction from the 1st dimension? That's easy. Took geometry, you know that 90 degrees is this over here. We'll make that little square that shows us that's what it is. So what we do is we stack up a whole bunch of lines next to that initial line. And then we end up with a plane. Oh, look, I just drew what is essentially a flat representation of a piece of paper. And that's the 2nd dimension. Here, we'll change a different color. That's the 2nd dimension. I should make these lines green because it takes 2 pieces of information. If I make a dot over here, we have to talk about the X and the Y. And then we can say where that dot is in that particular field that we've just drawn. And what's perpendicular to the 2nd dimension. This is easy. We all live in the 3rd dimension. We know all about this. We're going to now jump off the surface of the flat plane. So if that was like a flat piece of paper or the flat top surface of a table, what we have just done is jumped off the surface of the table. Or another way of thinking about it is we are now stacking up many flat planes on top of each other, like flat playing cards, we're stacking them up, or flat pieces of paper. You stack up enough flat playing cards or flat pieces of paper, what do you get? You get a cube, and now I'll draw a cube over here so that we can all talk about the same thing. So this is like the room that we live in. It's the box that we live in. We're totally familiar with cubes. This is the 3rd dimension, and it's the 3rd dimension because it requires 3 pieces of information to say where we are in space, X, Y, and Z. Now, those are the 3 spatial dimensions. And if I said to you, okay, now what's 90 degrees to the 3rd dimension? Many times in my studio, people are stumped when I say this, and that's because it's not a visible dimension, unless you're wearing a watch, and then you can point to your wrist and say, oh, it's time. Or if I've got a clock on the wall, then we can say, oh, the 4th dimension is time. And I'm doing all this so that you'll understand my shorthand when I show you the time vortex. So the 4th dimension, now let's grab a totally different color, here's a purple color, is many boxes lined up next to each other. And I'm going to start off by drawing boxes and cubes, but now I'm just going to simplify. These are all cubes. Just imagine they're all cubes, and that there's lots and lots and lots of them. They keep on going and going and going off the edge of my paper. This is the 4th dimension. So the 4th dimension is a timeline, and a timeline is very analogous to, I'm drawing a long skinny French bread. That's a French bread. And these are like pieces of bread that I'm cutting. I'm cutting slices of bread so that you can put some nice brie cheese or something on it. So this is your birth over here, and this is your death over here on this end, and all of the slices of bread in between are the moments of your life that you get to inhabit and experience. It's the 4th dimension. But we don't just have one particular timeline that we can travel down. That would be very limited. We actually have many, many, many timelines that we can travel down. So in this drawing that I did over here, we're basically always starting off with a point, a line, and a plane. And there's a teacher that does very good videos about this named Rob Bryanton. Let's write that down for you. Because when someone does good work, I like to share that with other people. Oh, I did not. Bryanton. There you go. He's on YouTube. And so, yeah, you can check out. He does Imagine the 10 Dimensions. And he doesn't necessarily add to it the consciousness aspect that I'm adding to it, but does very good work in terms of creating a linguistic infrastructure that we can all use and be on the same page with for what we're talking about. So this is where I get the shorthand of point, line, plane. The 0th dimension was a point. The first dimension was a line, and the second dimension was a plane, and we stacked up a bunch of planes and made a cube. Well, now we're going to do the same thing with time. All right, and we're getting there. We're doing yoga of the perception so that we can all understand the flying rainbow lasagna as the changing of time, space, and consciousness, the fabric of time, space, and consciousness. So this French bread over here, let's say it's a line like this. And what happens when I go 90 degrees to that line? I make more lines, more lines, more lines, more lines, more lines, more lines. So that would be a plane. And that would be the 5th dimension. But at this point, we have to be non-literal in our understanding of what we're talking about here, because the 5th dimension is not just a bunch of French breads lined up next to each other, like a bunch of pencils, or a bunch, or like my fingers lined up next to one another if I hold them all together like this. The 5th dimension is the cosmic bakery, where this French bread is baked. So the cosmic bakery contains the possibilities of bread and dough and the equipment to make bread and dough, but not the bread and dough itself. So it's got like a bag of flour, here's some flour inside of it, it's got some water, and it's got ovens that you can actually put the dough into. It has the reality creation potential, but it does not have all, like if you want to think, oh, it's, lots and lots of finished narratives that are all lined up next to each other. That's not what the 5th dimension is. And this is important because there's so much in whatever New Age, writings that people speak about. They talk about you're heading out of the 3rd dimension into the 5th dimension. Like, we need to use language impeccably. So let's define what the 5th dimension is, because this has everything to do with your higher faculties and the mechanism for reality creation. So I want to draw the time vortex. And again, this is backstory and review for anyone who's been in this class or watched my videos, but for anyone who's new, this is where it's all starting to fill in and go together. And also, I'm not going to stop on the dimensions. This is the 4th dimension because it requires 4 pieces of information to determine the length, the position of an X, on here. We got X, Y, and Z, where something is in space. And then we also have to talk about time, T. Where is this X in time? Is it here where you were born, the first moment of your life? Is it here at the end, the last moment of your life? No, it's not. It's here. Maybe someplace like you were 16 years old or something like that. So we know where you were in time and space that is determined by where you were physically, geographically, in the spatial realm, and also where you were in terms of the clock. And then if we took many, many possible timelines and added them up together, what you end up with is a formation that looks a lot like this time vortex. And the time vortex is the lower quadrant. It's a simplification and like a flattening out or a diagram of this shape that I'm showing you all the time. And this shape, so if we have this giant purple dot that is the central convergence point, that is this 0th dimension, the presence of everything, all intelligence, all possibilities, all probabilities. It's where we come from and it's where we journey back towards. When we come out of there, we come over to this little area over here, and this is the flowing membrane of death. I'm making arrows here to show like a waterfall. It is flowing in that direction, and this is a flat cross section of something that is actually a spiral shape, like a vortex that goes, that's terrible drawing, but it goes around like that. So you understand when I am making timelines that go up like lollipops like this, it's a simplification just so that we can see the diagram more easily. But the idea is like a whirling, twirling tornado or water spout. This shape is made by nothing more than the energy of consciousness and time whirling amidst itself. And just like a water in a glass, like if we have a glass of water here and here's the top surface of the water, there's this thing on the top surface of the water called a meniscus that is a slight thickening due to surface tension that creates the top of the water as kind of like a lens. That same phenomenon happens with these edges of the time vortex over here, and that is a flowing membrane, and I call it both the interstices and the membrane of death. And this is what culturally in this time and place has been referred to as hell or Hades or the hell realm or one aspect of afterlife. And I'm going to get all into what happens when we die. Let me just do, this is fourth dimension, this timeline, having many, many timelines, possibilities in a time field. That's the fifth dimension. So it's like the possibilities of making new bread, raw dough. And remember, we're going to bookmark that concept of raw dough for how it relates to our pineal gland, imagination, reality creation machine. But then there's also the sixth dimension. And that would be if this is a flat plane over here, flat piece of paper. Wait, let me draw it in a better way. Here's a flat purple piece of paper, or like a flat tabletop, right? What is 90 degrees to that flat tabletop? It's if we jump off of the surface of that flat piece of paper. But wait a minute, that flat tabletop, that flat piece of paper, this is the fifth dimension. It's all of these different possible timelines. So what happens? We become like this here, this is like a little red bird that is flying up above the river of time. And this little bird has been up there for a very long amount of time and has been able to see how the river of time has changed and diverted, how it once flowed in one direction for, let's say, first the river might have flowed in this direction, but then something changed and then it flowed in this direction. So it's like saying, okay, all of this, it's like word processing, not from the time of typewriters, but from the time of modern day computers and word processors, that you make a version of reality. That's like the version of the term paper that you are writing. And then you press save, and that saves one version of reality, maybe where the timeline goes in this direction. But then you make edits, and maybe you write things in a completely different way. And then what happens is the timeline is going in a different direction. And this bird up here, this sixth dimensional and higher bird, is the entity or perspective that is able to see the entire term paper over those many, many edits. So the time field is alive. This is this yellow sculpture here. This is a living embroidery. It has a metabolism, just like our physical body has a metabolism. Oxygen must come in, oxygen must go out. Water must come in, water must flow out. Nutrients must come in and be metabolized, and the nutrients must go out and be, expressed kinetically. This is the same thing. This is energy that is flowing around the time field. And it's a living being, and we are like little tiny red blood cells that are circulating around the larger time body over here. Okay, and all this again is backstory to genetic squashing. This membrane of death, and I'm highlighting in red down here, this was never meant to be a portion of the time field that we needed to explore firsthand, like through our firsthand experience. This was meant to be a place of peripheral possibilities. So if I now turn this yellow sculpture on its end so that we're looking at it from the top down, we see a bullseye. And I'll draw this picture over here. Now we have a bullseye. This is the periphery that I just drew in red. And this is that central convergence point. That's like the bullseye where we're trying to go. If I made an arrow, I'm trying to make my arrow go directly to that little wormhole, because that's infinity. That's where you get out of this level of reality, out of these constraints. I'm understanding that everyone here feels very, very limited and constrained, because it's like saying you don't get to explore the timelines that you wish to explore. What you have to do is go through every single possible, when I say the word iteration, I mean combination of events, belief systems, thoughts. It's like a giant experiment. It's your quantum laboratory, and you are the experimenter, and you're going through every single possible thing that it could possibly be. Like if you think of Thomas Edison, and he was a great inventor, and he wanted to know, what type of material can I use to make the filament of a light bulb? Can I use this? I don't know, try it. No, it didn't work. Try this, didn't work. This didn't work. This didn't work. It took a lot of tries before he got to the thing that actually worked. This is what we are doing in terms of time. And it's not the way that we were meant to live. We were meant to live like this light blue color being emanated from this zeroth dimension, assemble out here into the material realm. This is a realm of density. We have slowed down light to this point of being able to experience light that is moving slower than the speed of light and has densified in this way. And then what we're supposed to do is maintain our connection to this infinity consciousness while we travel on this central core timeline. And that is like being in alignment with this central possibility. It's like having your chakras or energy centers of your body in a perfect structure like this, as opposed to the left, to the right, or wobbling back and forth, because this is also a dynamic structure. And that yellow structure that I'm always holding up, it is very similar to a helicopter. If this is a helicopter down here, like this is the body of the helicopter, and here's its tail, and it's got blades that go around the top, and then a rotor that goes around the backside. And this blades and rotor are at 90-degree angles. Everyone's starting to understand 90-degree angles. This is a very magical and necessary thing, that this gyro stabilizes the flight of the helicopter through time and space, that it makes it fly in a nice straight line, because we have these two 90-degree forces that are complementary. So this flies in a nice straight line across the atmosphere. But what we're doing with our higher faculties is making our flight through time. Here's this timeline, that French bread. We're flying nice and straight along that French bread. Maybe that's that wonderful central French bread that we all want to be on. That is this that I'm highlighting right over here. So, okay, I got up to the 6th dimension, and basically what we keep doing is recycling back that point, line, plane, point, line, plane. And the idea is that we keep getting a higher and higher dimensional perspective on the creation of the time field. And the creation of the time field is the creation of events of reality. So wait, I'll get back to my face. More takeaway. DNA is, so your chromosomes aren't flat, static objects that don't dance or move. They dance and move all the time. Your chromosomes, your DNA, is much more than just the physical descriptor of what the color of your skin is going to be, you know, whether you have attached or free floating earlobes, you know, what are your eyeballs shaped like? And I'll get to your wonderful chat questions. Thank you for everyone who participates and asks me questions in the chat. And I understand that that's an essential part of this discussion that is going on. We're not just expressing our possibilities as protein structures. Our DNA is the integument that ties us together from moment to moment through time. So now I go back to the whiteboard, because remember, I just drew for you the third dimension. Third dimension is made up of a bunch of cubes. Oh, sorry. The third dimension is one cube. Here, I just drew this guy over here. That's the third dimension. And then the fourth dimension is made up of many, many third dimensional cubes lined up next to each other, kind of like train cars on a train track. All right, so here's the train track of reality, and we have all of these fourth dimensional train cars. I say they're like train cars or like French bread. And each one of these that I'm highlighting here is a moment. Like this is 1 o'clock, and this is 1:01, and this is 1:02, and this is 1:03. And we've been here, you've been listening to my flapping, moving mouth parts for an extensive amount of time here. You're not in the same body that you were in at 3:15. You and all of us have jumped consciousness from this initial starting point, this initial position in the third dimension, to the next moment, to the next moment, the next moment, the next moment, the next moment. And that the force that makes our consciousness jump from moment to moment, from body to body, literally, we have an endless, here's a super simplification of a body, but we have an endless number of bodies that are our bodies of time. And, you know, this is the one, your body of 1:01, and this is your body of 1:03, and you are jumping from body to body. And it is the dance of your DNA that fuels this jumping of your consciousness. So when I make these little green squiggles here, what I am drawing is a simplification of your DNA, which is dancing. And it is the dance movements of your DNA that make you jump from moment to moment through time, and also that determine which timeline you're going to be on, because I just drew those, you know, red boxcars of reality, but let's also say there's this blue boxcar of reality timeline that goes on down this way. And let's say that you can start off, oh, I'm jumping to this boxcar over here, but then maybe you start thinking new thoughts and believing in a new way and behaving in a new way, and you make your DNA jump onto this blue timeline. And then you start jumping onto these blue timelines instead. You know, you jump onto this. That is exactly how we transform. That is exactly how we learn to navigate the time field. And this is what epigenetics is. So what I was saying to you earlier with the process of methylation, the process of how tightly coiled each one of the little springy, like, you know, like slinky springs of your DNA is, that is what epigenetics is. That determines whether, if like these are the slinky springs, If the pages are spread apart, RNA messengers can get in there and read very easily. If the pages are not spread apart, RNA messengers cannot read what is in those chapters. And those chapters can tell you how to grow a horrible tumor and die, or those chapters can tell you how to dismantle a horrible tumor and stay alive for a long time. This is why identical twins do not develop identical diseases. I say this all the time, and this goes to the work of Bruce Lipton. He's another good person that you can look into. The idea that, so okay, I ask people to voluntarily participate in my webinars because I understand that our DNA changes behavior dependent upon the new thought structures and ideas and thought conceptual programs, even like software programs, even though we're not hardware and I'm not a transhumanist, that run in our mind, that it is our mind, our thoughts and our feelings and our cosmology, the story that we tell ourselves about how reality is created and structured, that determines the dance of our DNA. So some people are dancing their DNA according to this old social boring structure that says, as you move through time, you're going to get more and more decrepit, and you're eventually going to get diseased, and you're eventually going to die. That is an old plan, old song, an old melody that we're playing there. And that is the melody that says, don't go up this central core timeline that comes from the 0th dimension, that central convergence point, and returns to the 0th dimension. That's that like tent pole or yurt pole that connects you right to that. And when you're on that timeline, you are not disconnected from your higher faculties to higher dimensional, less dense realms. You're connected, which is what we are all supposed to be. But what has happened due to the genetic squashing was people's trajectory aiming for the membrane of death. So now I'll get into mythologically the invention of death. So back, like this is the ancient Egypt, the whole idea that there was once a time of the gods, the immortals, and that nobody ever died. This is what I'm describing as the antediluvian world. We never died. We never hit the membrane of death. If we were playing the game of Operation, we would never hit the little edge and hear the buzzer buzz and lose our turn. Everybody did a perfect job. That was what we were created for, that we were created to be perfect musicians. And we use this, our higher faculty, in order to see the music of time. So now I'll go to pictures because pictures worth 1,000 words. And this is all, I've done this on many other presentations, but like I said, I'm trying to condense everything down into this moment, into this recording, and so that people can use this as a starting point. So when I talk about the higher faculties, I got to choose the right colors here. So this dot down here, this is green, and that's the level of the heart, and that's the level of unconditional love. And unconditional love, far from being an airy, fairy, hippie ideal, like a romantic fantasy, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about an actual tone, and I'm now going to play this tone on my little xylophone over here. That, I don't know if you could even hear that. I'm trying to be not too loud. Wake up my little dog boss. Play it again. Love is a tone. So love is a tone that we make when we move through time at one moment per moment. Like if this is one box of reality, one box, another cube box reality, another box of reality. And we're like Pac-Man or Miss Pac-Man, and we're jumping from moment to moment at exactly the right rate. What we're not doing is clinging to the past. And what we're not doing is reaching forward in anticipation of the future. That is what we do that's like being a good musician. Anita Smith, thank you so much. I'm gonna mute everybody. Thank you so much. Cool, that's good. Okay. Yeah, if anybody new is joining on, I just ask that you mute yourself, not because I don't want to hear from you, but because it makes feedback noise for when I'm recording on the eventual YouTube video. Love is a tone that we make when we move through time at one moment per moment. And when you make that love tone, what you're doing is making love with the whole rest of the cosmos. And making love, again, this is not romantic partnership. This is not like hugging, kissing, having babies with. This is the type of give and take, like when you are unconditionally loving, when you're activating this aspect of your energy centers, you are giving an equal amount as what you are receiving. That is what I mean when I'm saying you go through time at one moment per moment. It's like someone, like I say that little old, Pac-Man thing where he's eating little dots, and here's Pac-Man and he's eating the dots. that it's about eating one dot at a time. And of course, our mind is a hacked human operating system. And when I describe our mind, let me choose a yellow color, I'm talking about this solar plexus, this chakra that's down here. This is not our natural mind. This is not the way we naturally use our mind or our conception or move through time, that it's the hacked human operating system. And it's only that hacked system that allows us to disperse our energy by thinking about the past or anticipating the future. So the higher faculties include, and I don't really emphasize it that much on this particular drawing, but there's the throat chakra right here. This is an energy center, and you can see the arms come out from the energy center, and it's also your larynx. So it's communication. Anytime you gesture, you're using that energy center. Anytime you speak or write or play music or make a painting or whatever you do to communicate, that is the energy center that you're using. And then up from there is this central, it is an aperture that is your third eye or your higher dimensional perception. And so if we look at the green energy center, this is like a magnetic field that is created by the whirling and twirling aspect of your heart. And it creates this, I want to say like a vortex. It's like a track within which the wheels of the higher dimensional faculties run. So these are just like, I just drew tires on a car, and you can see how those tires roll forward and they roll around in a circle that is created by the whirling motion of the heart. So it's like saying your heart creates a foundation of unconditional love, which is the literal tone. Let's create this tone. I'm making the tone. Oh, making the love tone. And we do it when we meditate. And we also do it when we're mindful. And mindful means that I'm taking my meditative expression, my meditative perspective, and I'm bringing it forward into my daily waking consciousness. Like I can be mindful when I do the dishes. I can be mindful when I walk, down the street. I can be mindful at any time. And many, many people also are focusing the entirety of everything on this energy center and on those. That's where you get your superpowers, your superhuman powers and perspective from, but that's not the end of the journey. And that's the huge caveat, the vulnerability that many people are focusing on. This is the Christ chakra. This over here, this is your Christ chakra. But again, it has nothing at all to do with the Christian religion or with the story of Roman Jesus or anything like that. But it is a very special aspect of our anatomy. And when you begin to raise energy, when you get enough gas in your car, that's what the meditation and mindfulness of cultivating your heart is all about. You get enough gas in your car of consciousness to begin to see through here. And I call this your inner telescope. And it's also, it is like your attention comes from Greek attenuos. Here, I'll write it for you. Attenuos, meaning to reach out. This aperture reaches out like an elephant's trunk, and whatever it touches upon, it learns from. And so you can reach out to the cosmos. That is what I do. That's how I learn and do my paintings. You can reach out to another person. You can reach out to a chloroplast. I wanted to learn about how plants act. So I reached out to a leaf with this part of my mind, and I touched a leaf and I learned all about how it acts. But that's not the end of the journey, because we also have this, the violet chakra, or this highest of our energy centers. If I play it on my piano here, here's a high note. I hope you can hear that very high note. That's the highest of what we have in the octave, the totality of what we know as human. And this is like where we plug into the cosmos or to the divine or to that which is higher dimensional, less dense, and more organized. Doesn't necessarily mean better. If I play this note, it's higher, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's better than a lower note. So again, I know that we're on this traumatized planet, and that there are all of these inner programs that run that say you're a dirty, disgusting, oily, smelly, pooping, farting, incarnated human, and you're not, quote unquote, as good as a disembodied spirit. Like there's that whole thing that's running, but that is not truthful at all. What is truthful is that, we're in a hijacked body and we're having a hijacked perception, but that being in a body is a wonderful opportunity. And the whole idea is that this violet energy center works in conjunction and in partnership with this indigo energy center. The indigo energy center is like a needle in a compass. So here I'm drawing the purple outer shell is like the compass that protects this inner needle, or maybe it's vice versa, but this is like a needle that tells you, which way is east and which way is west and which way is north. So the higher faculties, what I'm trying to get across here, the idea that these higher faculties are like the compass needle that tells us which direction is divinity. Where is God? Which direction should we go in order to find God? Where is that central convergence point of the sculpture? Where is the 0th dimension? Because it is constantly changing and shifting in our world. So in order to be aligned with it, like in order to have this aperture properly aligned with that central convergence point, we need to be constantly innovating. And that's why I also say this is analogous to jazz music, that we're not like classical musicians playing the same notes that have been around for 500 or 600 or 700 years, that we are jazz musicians that have to innovate and respond to the context of what is going on right now. So this, when humanity gets to this level of just having awakened their inner eye, but not yet connecting with this crown chakra, I should be drawing in purple up there, not yet connecting with this, it's like the librarian of the cosmos that tells you what is the most salient information, what do you need to learn about, what do you need to look at, which direction do you need to go, that's the greatest vulnerability, greatest period of vulnerability, and that's what we've been experiencing for about the past 2,000 years in terms of our individual journey and our planetary journey and what we are as a culture. Everyone has been super focused on Jesus and the story of Roman Jesus and the story of Jesus and his suffering, and thinking about the end of the world, thinking about your personal eschaton, thinking about the planetary eschaton. Back to my face. This is why I'm talking about this. We're at that moment right now of giving birth to a new reality, and many people are expecting either return of a physical, literal, bearded Jesus man, or the necessity of fulfilling prophecy in the book of Revelations before we can get to a diamond jubilee of utopian, happiness. None of those things are what's truthful, but this is all about how those basic behavioral belief system structures are making people go, instead of up the central core timeline, to the edge, to the membrane of death, and that it is guiding us off of the road of life, making us hit the membrane of death. Brief pause. It is illogical on a basic level to say that in order to live forever and be immortal, you have to die. That is not what I believe at all. And this is what I'm trying to say, that with no offense, and I wear a cross because I'm connected to Christ consciousness, that is an abstraction that has nothing at all to do with Jesus or the Christian church on earth. That Christ consciousness is what happens when you begin to look through this aperture and you're connected to higher dimensional guidance, and you realize that you're part of a mosaic, that you are one retina cell of a giant, giant eye. And of course, the Illuminati have stolen and hijacked all of these basic cosmic truths and distorted it and applied it into their own, malevolent, like fakery, the idea of the all-seeing eye. No, the real all-seeing eye is a giant cosmic meta entity, meta meaning overarching. This is a being that lives on the scale of the stars, and that's its neurology. And we are all like little tiny portions of that neurology. Like, we've got red blood cells that flow through our body and keep us healthy and alive and, filled with nutrients. We are like the red blood cells that circulate around through this time body. This is all backstory to Flying Rainbow Lasagna. Thank you for being patient and allowing me to get it all out. This is also not a static object, and it's clearly not a flat object. It is made from energy that circulates, you got it, Golden Hawk, microcosm and macrocosm, energy that circulates in these basic figure 8 patterns. So this energy goes around like this. You can see that's basic figure 8, but of course then it kind of changes angles a little bit, and it keeps going, and it changes angles, and it keeps going, it changes angles, and it keeps going. So we have the basic figure 8 motion, and we also have circular motion. So now let me get down to how this shape is created. We did building the dimensions. Now let's get down to how we build this shape. If we start off with a flat line that is shaped like a circle, that's like a hula hoop. And then and that's like the most basic that we can possibly have. And then if I take that hula hoop and I spin it in the next highest dimension, what I end up is many hula hoops. So now you can see I'm using the magic of perspective in order to draw many hula hoops together. And then if I draw lines of latitude and longitude, then we use our system of interpretation in order to say, hey, that looks just like a sphere. So we've taken a flat hula hoop, we spun it around to the next highest dimension. Now we have a sphere. And then if I take that sphere and I move it around in a circle, what I end up getting is a donut. And the donut is created like here. I'm going to draw it in a cross section. And you'll understand my cross section shorthand that I always use. Like, this is the sphere that has the lines of latitude and longitude. and we made it spin around like this. So that spinning around motion is kind of like making the cake part of the donut. And then the inner donut hole, this, you know, central portion over here that I'm highlighting, is made because there's no sphere spinning there. So we have this, you know, basic shape that is made out of the sphere that's spinning around. But then what happens when we add another dimension to that? Well, adding the next dimension means that we take this entire toroid or donut shape or torus, and I begin to make it spin end over end, like if it were a salt shaker, or if it's my pencil. I think you can see me spinning it around in this little tiny thumbnail sketch, spinning it end over end like this. And what happens when we do that is, if I make these little red spots, here, this little red spot and this little red spot and this one, they start to spin around in a circle, and they make complementary vortexes. And those complementary vortexes get organized like this. So that is how we made this yellow shape. I'll do it one more time so that we got this down pat. A flat hula hoop becomes a sphere, and the sphere spins around in a circle, becoming a torus. And that torus then spins end over end, adding 2 more vortices to the torus and creating this 4 vortex shape, okay? So this 4 vortex shape is made out of time and timelines. We have the bottom time vortex that I just showed. So we have this whole broad area down here is birth. You are born the most times, you have the most beginnings to your time threads in this embroidery. And this is a refinery of consciousness, where we are literally focusing down like a very, very broad, dispersed light beam, focusing it down until it's like one coherent laser, and that's who we really are. And that focusing down process is a question of focusing down activities like events. It's just like that movie Groundhog's Day. Part of it is changing inner characteristics, becoming less rude and boorish, and becoming a better musician and being able to better listen to other people. But part of it is exploring the endless iterations of the choose your own adventure novel of your life, where you say, if I do this, what happens? If I do this, what happens? If I do this, what happens? Sometimes that's not even based in character. That's just like saying, should I turn right or turn left when I get to the street, when I get to the stop sign? It doesn't mean you're a good person or a bad person. It's just like there are different realities that we are exploring. So this shape is the precursor to this shape. And let me also show you, and then I'll get it. I think it's time for me to take the Q&A for level 1, and then we'll hop on over and do level 2. Let me show you one more detailed image of this. And I know that this is recap. Like I said, I'm trying to just distill everything into one recording that everybody can easily access and understand what this is. This is like, that yellow sculpture that I hold up all the time is just one of these layers. It's just one of these layers, and that our entire body has 7 layers. It's just like, you know, notes on the piano. There's actually 8 notes in an octave, but we'll do it real fast. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then back to C. So this is what we've got down here. We're starting with the red. We consider that C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then we would go back to C. It would be going back to the, you know, to the next cycle. So that this is the whole idea, that we have, these are nested and they are proportional. So I do this extensively in the recorded online lessons. I encourage everyone to enroll and take the lessons because it helps you to learn the music theory from the beginning. Like this is lesson 1 that I start off with, the basic proportions. If this is red, and I'm writing them all in the same color, but just understand that I'm, you know, going through the rainbow here: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. And if red is the integer 1 or the number 1, then orange is always going to be 1/2 the size of 1, and yellow is always going to be 1/3, and green is always going to be 1/4. Light blue will always be 1/5, and indigo will always be 1/6, and violet will always be 1/7 the size of this red wavelength. And that's a musical proportion that holds true across everything. It holds true in your own body, because your body, this whole thing here, you are a rainbow expression of the light that comes from our sun. The reason why we have Roy G. Biv is because when you take white light, this little dot up here, that's like the emanation of photons from our star, and you put it through a triangle-shaped prism, not prison with bars, but a prism with an M at the end, what you end up with is, or are, all of these different colors that have been split up. This is the color recipe of who you are in relationship to the sun, which is the nearest expression of the stellar network. This is the recipe of consciousness of what we are in terms of being emitted from the star, that is the sun. And so again, I didn't invent this language. This is music theory written by the great composer who's even better than Mozart. He's totally rocking, great musician. And I went to music school by opening my third eye and attenuating and understanding all of this. And I draw it and paint it as accurately as I can in order to share these ideas. And I'm telling you all of that backstory so that we'll do in level 2, how to transform into the flying rainbow lasagna. Because I'll get into Q&A right now, but let me just say this for everyone who's been with me through this recording of level 1. This is not a mere abstraction. This is not just something that I like to tell people about that doesn't actually do anything. It's like I make a sculpture of it so that I have something to point to in reality. But what this actually is a concept that is also a verb. So the idea of epigenetics. Why do some people have spaced apart loops of their DNA and some people have tightly squashed together loops of their DNA? That's epigenetics. What determines that is thoughts and concepts and beliefs. If I tell you something like, if your mom has cancer, you will have cancer too. I just inserted that information into your body structure, and you can then choose whether or not to run that program. But I can give you a different program, which is the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, that says, hey, you can actually rearrange what your DNA is doing. You can teach it to dance in a new pattern that makes you have a new experience of time. You get to jump through the train cars of time in a new way, and you don't have to have cancer in your body. That doesn't have to be a train car that you jump into. You can have a completely different experience of your body. So giving all of this information, all this backstory about what our chakras are shaped like, how they got to be shaped like that, and why we're squashed is all about being able to jump into the next highest dimension. Giving you these ideas is part of it, and then teaching the actual process of envisioning it and how you do the meditation is also part of it. And that's like saying, first you learn music theory. What's D flat? What are the notes on the staff? How do I read music? That's what this is. That's what I just taught you in terms of the time vortex. What are these timelines? What am I seeing? Because you know something, when people have come into my studio, I've never taken ayahuasca. I'm dealing with epilepsy, so I have to be very careful about what I do to my brain, and I can't take any stimulants or hallucinogens or anything like that. I just take CBD, medical cannabis, in order to heal my brain. But some people have taken ayahuasca, and they come into my studio, and they're like, hey, that's exactly what I saw when I was having my ayahuasca experience. And I'm like, that's because, hey, that's an actual landscape of a place that exists. It's like we both visited China or Thailand, and I painted this landscape of what I saw, what it looked like there, and someone else went there and they're like, hey, that looks exactly like that place that I visited in Thailand. I'm like, that's right, because that's an actual place. So again, this is an actual structure that I didn't invent. It's a linguistic structure, and I'll get more into what it is. But what I did do is I took that basic linguistic structure and I innovated, just like a jazz musician takes the basic 4 notes of the song, you know, A, C, D, F, and transforms it into all sorts of cool new combinations. Well, we have 4 different proteins that are the amino acid building blocks of our DNA that determine what our physical bodies are shaped like, and also what our experiences through time are woven together like. But Flying Rainbow Lasagna means you can take those 4 basic building blocks and puzzle pieces and rearrange them into all sorts of cool new shapes. So I use this analogy all the time too. Tech knows what I'm talking about, that you could take any arbitrary piece of written material, like the 2004 Chevy Malibu handbook, you know, of the car, and then as long as you have a pencil with an eraser, erase out all the boring parts, erase out all the stuff that's gobbledygook and nonsense, erase out all the things that are not relevant, and write in all the things that are relevant. And you could transform that arbitrary telephone book or manual for the car into a true masterpiece of the written word. And that's what we're doing with our bodies, that you can take the basic raw material of what your ancestors up until this point have given you in terms of your genetic code, and also the human operating system that is known as, you know, your thought structure and your language structure, and also what we're taught in this time and place as basic truths of reality, like cosmology. Where did I come from? Mommy, daddy, where did I come from? Mommy, daddy, why am I here? Why are we all here? Science gives us this story about the Big Bang, and most of us believe that as a way of like saying, who are we? How did we get here? But it also means that we can take those basic presumptions, like the given of this math proof of reality, and then build upon it in order to find a new solution that solves the proof. And when you solve a math proof, it's different than doing a calculation that is 1 + 1 = 2. It's much more like, we'll get into this in level 2, of doing visual math that is made out of shapes and dynamic forms. Okay, I'm drinking water. I'm getting to the Q&A because let me just say this, I greatly appreciate the quality of thoughts and, you know, what people come to when they have good questions. Good questions are really good. Good questions are important because sometimes I don't know. Here we go. Okay, Patricia asks, is the crown chakra always open, or do we have to open it? Aren't we already connected to source? That is a great question. So here's what's going on. When you're first born as a little tiny infant, everybody has a nice, big, fat, fully open crown chakra, and it is called the baby's fontanelle. It's the place right on the top of the head where the plates of the skull have not yet fused together. And it's during that first year of life that the baby's skull fuses together, the fontanelle is no longer soft, and also we have a change of attention, focus of attention. Little babies, when they first come here, are focused not only on what the physical outer manifested reality of other people and cribs and toys and, you know, applesauce and stuff like that. They're also equally focused on the inner realm, the connection to the divine, that cosmic ocean of consciousness that we came from before we were in a physical body. And over the course of that first year, babies learn to no longer focus on that inner cosmic realm and to turn the focus of their attention to this outer realm. And this is necessary. This isn't something that is bad or wrong in any way, because it's like saying, you're here, you're in the music, you're in the symphony of life. You're supposed to pay attention to the music that is here. But the problem is we're not supposed to be completely cut off from the great cosmic composer. We're supposed to be focused on our experience of being here, you know, in a body and what it feels like to have 5 senses. But we're also supposed to send back real-time broadcasts of what we're experiencing when we are embodied. We are little tiny miniature like feelers that were sent out by the sun and the stars. And it's not supposed to be like, okay, you come here for 40 or 50 or 100 years, have a bunch of experiences, and then send back your information at the moment of death. That's not what's supposed to happen, but that's what's been happening. What we're supposed to do is give real-time broadcasts to say, hey, I'm here, I'm embodied, this is what I'm happening, this is what I'm smelling, this is what I'm feeling, this is what is happening all around me. When people are like on the moment of death, it might be that they're lying in their hospital bed dying, or maybe they're in a car and they're about to smash into a brick wall or whatever it is, drive off a cliff. Many people have a spontaneous reconnection through their crown chakra to the source of consciousness that emanated us, or higher dimensional, less dense intelligence, or the divinity, however vocabulary word you want to describe it. But it's like if you've been in a cell phone dead zone, been in a dead zone your whole life with no signal coming through, but then at that last moment, you finally get a signal and you're like, everything is horrible and I'm about to die, please help. And then the sun is like, oh, okay, we need to, pull some kind of a miracle. Sometimes miracles happen because that is the explanation, that it is like, there was no guidance, there was no assistance because you were in a dead zone where the signal was not getting through, or very much like a bat's echolocation, that the bat sends out sound waves that bounce off of an object that then bounce back to them. And if the sound waves just keep going out and they don't bounce, then the bat is like, oh, I guess there's nothing there. So the great cosmic, the emanator, the sun and the stars that emanated us, if there's no signal, they're just like, oh, I guess there's nothing there. I guess there's nothing going on. But then when signal happens, it's like, hey, I'm about to jump into a brick wall. I need help, SOS. Then it's like, we better actually change and do something. So now let me get into the genetic squashing though, because the genetic squashing removed from many people the capacity to remain connected through the crown chakra, and that's what we're supposed to do. So what happens is, let's say in a percentage, we could be 100% connected, or we can be 1% connected. Well, mostly we're about 3% connected, because humanity, you have to stay connected to the source in order to get vitality for the cells of the body to keep on being alive. But we are given just enough vitality to stay alive on a physical cellular level, but not enough vitality to actually be awakened and empowered in terms of perceiving the time field and navigating it effectively. So that's the part where it's like, yes, there are malevolent overlords. Yes, they have fucked you over. Yes, you should be upset about this. No, it's not okay. And my solution is, flying rainbow lasagna means rearrange your DNA so that you no longer have to be connected only a tiny minimal portion. We're all supposed to be connected 100%. And if you're connected to the sun 100%, you don't have to eat physical food anymore. And you run your body in a completely different way, not like an inefficient furnace that coal, like a coal-fired power plant that you put in a bunch of coal and then it, combusts. We would act more like perfect solar panels, where there's no loss, no friction, like a perpetual motion machine, where we're totally efficient in our use of energy. So there's lots more good questions. Okay. Golden Hawk says, I have sensed this anti-life program running for a few years now. I love the confirmation. She says, microcosm and macrocosm. I got that when you said that, and said, I'm so inspired by this, Aurora. Very excited to play more in the FRL reality. So yes, many people think of this world that we're in right now as a world of constant toil and drudgery, or like meaningless, boring existence. That's having to go through every single iteration. It's very boring. It's very horrible. And that's not how it was intended for us. We were intended to be able to be empowered participants, jazz musicians in the symphony. Because guess what? Sometimes you want to play something different than what the musical score says, or sometimes you want to play what is written, but play it differently. Like maybe sustain that note longer, or maybe make it shorter, or whatever it is. So that's the whole idea, that we're supposed to be connected to the emanator of consciousness, and we're supposed to give feedback, and we're also supposed to have our own idea, our own aesthetics of what things should look like. So I'll use my artwork as a very brief example. In some of my paintings, I just formally follow the prescribed patterns of the cosmos. But in some paintings, like these ones that have more blues and purple, I really like blue and purple. I was like, something, all these patterns where I do it, where it's just me following the music, it's very red and orange. How can I still follow the music, but add in more blue and purple? And that was my challenge as an artist. So that's what we're doing here as beings in the body. Like, we are little divine miniature co-creators. And the great composer said, hey, this is the music. This is the music of life. This is how you're supposed to do things. And when you're actually here, you might be like, okay, like maybe I want to do less red and orange and do more blue and violet down here in the symphony of life. How can I do that? And good musicians follow this pattern, and bad musicians don't follow this pattern, and the occupiers of the interstices are bad musicians who don't follow the pattern. And we'll get into what is dark magic and what is Satanism in level 2. Okay. Tech says, we are from the sun more than the earth, I heard. Is FRL going viral? I hope. Okay. I certainly hope that FRL is going viral. This is the whole idea. And also, so my work has been suppressed a lot. Like, my videos, literally, you can scroll back and see, even just last year, they used to get like 52 views on YouTube in a year, 52 views in a year. And that's not by accident, that's all intentional. And it's because there are various different algorithms that determine what comes up in recommended videos and how people find things. So the only way that my videos have been getting out there is by people specifically sharing them with their friends, or subscribing, or accessing them directly, so people find them through my webinars. That's the only way that this has been getting out there. And there's a reason for that. It's because this is like telling you the key to get out of this locked room, or this prison of existence that we are in. I don't like to call it a prison, because the truth is there are so many things that we can do here in this reality that are wonderful and fun and fulfilling. And something, I love making paintings and sculptures, and I love to sing and play music, and I love to design clothing. I don't consider any of that to be imprisonment. However, I do recognize that we are in this, the economy is totally not equitable. Our political system is rampantly corrupt. And also the experience of being embodied in a body. People are constantly being eaten away at. And that's the big takeaway. When we're supposed to have 100% connection to the divine, we are made to go askew. That primary connection is often made to go askew. And it's like we're pushed off of our intended timeline. And then our willpower is to say, no, I don't want to go towards the membrane of death. I want to go towards eternal life and towards infinity. So I talk about the death cult a lot. This is the idea that human religion is a control system that has been created in order to tell you that death is inevitable, death is necessary, you must die in order to achieve immortality. Look at this great Roman Jesus that lived many thousands of years ago. He died and achieved immortality. Be like him. Like, that's the template for existence. And I'm trying to tell you, like, no, that's not. And I'm not trying to also tell you, like, I'm an evil being and don't believe in God and, go away from religion. That's not who I am either. So again, if this is the first time you're accessing my work, I teach that human religion is a control system. However, that we are meant to activate our higher faculties and be able to see and understand all this music that is part of the time field, and that this is a part of who we are on a profound level, that this is not something superhuman, that this is the definition of who we are as human. We're supposed to have a car with a steering wheel and a windshield so we know where the heck we're going and be able to drive effectively on the roads of time. Okay, let me just end level 1 for right now, take a brief 5-minute break, and then get going on level 2. So I'm just pressing pause where I am in this explanation, because I got, I think, WALK, my DOG. So let me just do that for right now, and we'll be back in 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Just ending the recording for a while.